belief that you're able to do something is just as important, if not more important, than the actual ability to do that thing. Will it take jobs? More than likely. But there's also the real factor of it's not slowing down. So we can either choose to be discouraged by it, or we can choose to be inspired by it. Collaboration. You need to understand what creators you're working with. Creators are not line items. It's not an out-of-home campaign. It's not, I'm going to put my ad on all these buses and there's no emotion there. I was like, I just got to find a place where I can add value, especially when you're early in your career. If you can just go and add value, eventually people will see that you're special.
Nate Fox, welcome to Makes You Wonder. It's a pleasure to have you here. For anyone dialing in, tell us where you are calling in from.
Yeah, I'm calling in from San Francisco. I've been here for about 9 years now, and happy to be here. Thanks so much for having me. This has been a pleasure to connect with your team and get linked up.
Fantastic. Yeah, likewise. I mean, the pleasure is all on our side. You're a creative powerhouse. We're so blown away by your very cool experience from several brands that you've been working with: Google, Lyft, Robinhood. And some of the innovative campaigns you've been doing. And obviously we want to bring you on to this show where we just talk about the future of human creativity, AI, emerging technologies, and everything that kind of helps creatives and great storytellers do their craft and hopefully inspire a lot of our audiences out there around the world. So yeah, super excited to have you on the show. And I really want to start out with, I mean, you have a very impressive background, as I mentioned, all these crazy, creative positions that you've been in for these companies. But tell us a bit about yourself. Who's Nate, and how did you get where you are today?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I ask myself that a lot. I mean, in a nutshell, I've been in, like as you mentioned, I'm Nate Fox. I've been in the creative marketing industry for almost 15 years now. Starting off primarily at small startups or companies or nonprofits. And then I moved to San Francisco, like I said, about 9 years ago. Couldn't find a job to save my life. It was just, the market was really difficult. And a lot of my experience, people were like, we're looking for that. And really just busted my ass until I was able to finally get into a small startup. And then from there, worked my way up and got a role at Lyft, where I was on the brand creative team, kind of straddling brand and business. And honestly, I think that's where my career started to really expand and explode, because there was all this creative energy that I had that I knew I had potential for, but just no one gave me a shot yet. And once I got that shot, I just ran with it, man. I was like, all right, I gotta do all I can to just hustle and really kind of prove myself in these environments.
So let me ask you this. I mean, you're now leading content strategy and growth at Wells Fargo, which is a huge company, while also running this after-hour startup with Bashcast. Tell us about that. How does that work? How do you find the time to put creative energy into both those places? And teach us how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone wants to learn from me or not. It's a little bit of a mess, but I tell people I have the type of ADHD that wants me to focus on 100 things at once, and that's when I feel like at peace. And so for me, there's kind of a balance here. It's what I do is creative in nature, but maybe the company, especially in life, sometimes the company that you work for isn't as creative as maybe your creative output. And there was a season, even at some of the more creative startups I was at, where I felt like, hey, I have all this creative energy. I have all these ideas and thoughts, and I just want to try to get them out there and launch cool stuff or whatever. But I was getting a little frustrated because I didn't feel like, well, it could have been my position, it could have been the company, and this is no shade or no complaint. It's just the nature of life is they weren't looking for maybe the execution that I had in my brain, or I wanted to try, or I actually found that by having side projects and side gigs and things of that nature, it allowed me to put all of my hyper creative energy into those things, so that I wasn't fatigued in my day to day. And or frustrated, or they just would listen or do this or try this, or because how I am by nature is I'm just like, all right, let's just try something, and if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, we'll figure it out. Now, when you run a massive company that's at a Fortune 50 company, or you have to worry about the shareholders or whatever, you're a lot less likely to take these big risks or risks at all, because you're just like, I don't know if that's a calculated enough risk for me to take. And so these side things, they help me take risks and learn in those environments. And then what actually happens is I learn in those environments and I take that learning and I bring it to my day job or the thing that I'm doing, more professionally. And I actually think it makes me a more well-rounded creative or a thinker because I have a testing ground somewhere else that's not reliant, by the thing that, pays the bills and gives me health insurance, So, it allows me to kind of expand that creativity and try new things. And that's what I love to do.
I mean, that's great. That's a great way to do it, right? You have a little sandbox where you can actually develop ideas, take some risks, try new things that you can't really do in your live action job that you're in. I had a similar thing with like investing and advising. I had the exact same philosophy. It's because it's so easy to get stuck in your wheel tracks when you're at one place. It's one of the most underestimated kind of things out there is that you do get stuck in the role that you're in, and you need to try to get out of your way to get new perspective on things, to really be creative, right? Or find new opportunities. And by throwing yourself into something else that could be completely different, you can nurture that creativity and develop your ideas a little bit and just basically get a new vantage point from the day-to-day that you're doing, perhaps.
Exactly. It's spot on. Something that actually I've heard you share and talk about and post about is that beginner's mindset is like, how do we have this beginner's mindset where it's okay to learn? And I feel like I really resonate with that. But the thing is Wells Fargo or Robinhood, they're not paying for me to be a beginner. They're paying me to be well seasoned. But if I want that beginner's mindset, I need an outlet to still be a beginner in something, to still try something new and learn something new along the process. Because then I can take that and I can mold it and morph it. And so I really love when you talk about that beginner's mindset, because I think that's so key for anybody who's a creative. It's how do you put yourself in uncomfortable enough positions that allow you to learn and allow you to grow. And if you're just doing the same task over and over again, well, at some point you get so good at, blog headers or whatever you're creating that you don't learn anything new. So you got to have an outlet, or that's maybe a silly example, but I think you know what I'm saying. Is it's just giving yourself something different.
It's an interesting take, though, right? Like the companies, you're looking for already skilled people, and want experts. But sometimes the expertise is really about just trying new things that have never been done before, right? You don't know the output, and you don't know where you're going with it. I find that quite interesting, in how you can try to nurture that. And I guess that's what we're doing with the creator economy and the larger extent now. Brands are leveraging a lot of creators out there to get new, authentic takes on their brand, right? I don't know if Wells Fargo is doing that a lot, but a lot of brands are certainly dipping into that, because that's where we now go to hear the real stories and authentic stories about brands. Super fascinating. I mean, you've worked with some of the iconic brands, right? Wells Fargo is certainly one of them, a huge in a Fortune 50 company. What's been the most kind of rewarding campaign or initiative in your career so far? Is that hard to choose from, or are there some that's really standing out to you?
It's generally hard to choose, but I will say I love things that stand the test of time. As much as I'm a creative, my background's also as being a producer. And so it's this balance of being able to think outside the box, but also being calculated with your thinking and with the next step and how it's going to actually come to life. And something else about me is I love data. I love to understand metrics and how things impact people and how things, resonate with audiences. And so for me, when I think about memorable campaigns that I love, it's maybe not the sexiest thing that I've done, or it's the stuff that through time has lasted. And one that really comes to mind, and it's kind of silly, but it was when I was at Robinhood. We was post the GameStop fiasco. I won't talk much about that, but we all remember. Especially me. It was actually funny story is I was 3 days off pat leave. I just came back. And that's when the whole GameStop saga happened. And at that point, we hadn't built our social team yet. That was in the works for that year. And I got a call that, the morning after the whole GameStop fallout. And they're like, "Hey, Nate, you have some experience with social. Can you lead our social team for a little while?" And I was like, yeah, right in the biggest brand crisis ever. That sounds great. But I say that, and I don't, if anyone from Robinhood's listening, the way that Robinhood has come back has been insane. And so there's, again, no shade. I'm not here to talk trash about anybody or anything. But one thing that we did while, I had a little pod, and it was me, a designer, a copywriter, a couple other, different creatives. And we were like, all right, what can we do to turn things around? What can we do to change the negative, crashing sentiment to, I'm not even saying positive, just how do we get neutral? That was kind of the goal at that point. And in a random meeting, I was like, well, what? Because at that point, crypto was really hot. And what we started to do was we started to look at the audience that was most upset about the GameStop stuff, which primarily was like that Wall Street bets bro kind of audience. And then, okay, what other things are they interested in? Again, because I love data. And we found that crypto was like a resounding, like, okay, these guys, they love GameStop and they love crypto. Like those are their two favorite things in life. And so we're just like, hey, what if we did a regular content series just about what's happening this week in crypto? And that's what we called it. We called it This Week in Crypto. And every Friday we would post about the weirdest crypto news, things that were happening, like, whatever, we market trend, highest gainers, highest, whatever. And one that we launched it right around Doge Day, which is 420. And one is that Doge Day post was one of the most interacted with Doge posts ever, which that was really cool, especially from a brand that people didn't really love at that point. But that This Week in Crypto series became what we saw as being the thing that started to win people back, and they still do it today. Now it's grown and it's morphed from what the original idea or the original execution was, but that's also beautiful, is that you took something that this small scrappy team figured out, like, okay, can we just try to hit this audience? And not only did it work, but then you also let it air out and stand the test of time, and they still do it today. So every Friday I get a little ping that, hey, they just posted This Week in Crypto, and I smile because I'm like, you know what, this is cool. Like, this is the team and I that got to sit and think about this and do this. Like, they still believe in that, and that's really gratifying for me, is that it's beyond my time there, and it's still something that people really resonate with and enjoy.
Yeah, and it's also nice to see something that, to your point, stands the test of time, that actually continues on, and not only a campaign that might feel like a flash in the pan sometimes when you do something creative and it just passes, but this is kind of sticking on and actually growing into its own thing. That's really, really cool. Going back to like your creative process, and I'd like to talk about the business of creativity, right? And how you actually implement that, because it's something of creativity is such a human trait, to create something out of something, wherever we get our influences from, but really package it up and go from creativity to actually crafting something of content or whatever it may be you're going for. You've created like resources around this, right? You have this, creative and marketing ops playbook that you've implemented at Lyft, and concept labs you worked before as well. Like, what inspired you to kind of codify this? Is that your love for data and creativity? And like, how do you use them? How do you deploy them today to like empower your creative teams?
Yeah, there's kind of a couple legs there. One is I'm a really big believer in collaboration. I think that teams are better together. I think that this whole idea of this competition mindset, that you see it everywhere. Everyone's in competition, from politics to companies to everything. I just personally think that we do better with collaboration. And so the reason why I created it was a few reasons. One is it's this stuff that we saw, 35% increase in output at Lyft and at Robinhood when implementing these systems. And so I'm like, all right, this is a system that works, for one. And so I'm like, I gotta, put this on paper and help share it out. But two, one of my biggest joy, and it's kind of back to what I was saying about the Robinhood campaign, is that if things live beyond me, that's the win. I don't care if my name's on it. I don't care if it doesn't matter. I want people to win. I want companies to succeed. I want us to collaborate. And so it was kind of this culmination of I want to have a collaborative document. I mean, it's shared with a couple hundred different teams where I don't know if they use them or not, but even if they use 5% of it, it's, it may be something that they were missing. And maybe to explain the document really briefly, it's pretty much this, these layers of, okay, I want to get a creative production started, or I want to get a project kicked off or whatever. what are the steps that I can do to optimize that? That's really kind of what the end result of this document is. And so, so with that, I wanted just to share it with people and allow them to use this as a resource, because I have a little bit of a different mindset when it comes to creativity. A lot of people think limitations limit your creativity. I actually think the opposite. When you come to me, when I was working in an agency in a company said, okay, we pretty much have an unlimited budget. That doesn't help me, if I'm being really honest. Like, sure, yeah, you can think outside the box and, we're going to buy an island and I don't like, you can think like that, but honestly, it almost feels more limiting, where when you have limitations or you have restrictions or things around your campaign or whatever it is you're trying to build, I actually think it requires you to be more creative, because you have to also think about those limitations while you're trying to find something new and unique and fun and that's going to stand out. And so I actually think it improves your creativity to have some limitations or some restrictions. And I think that the creative process is part of that. Is if you have a process of how, and it doesn't dictate the way that you think. It's just, okay, how do we bring this thing to life is what it really helps with. I think that's really what helps a lot of teams. And so everything from, it has an example of what a creative brief should look like. And so for all of my designers and copywriters, that's they're hopefully they will love you for that. If you're on a creative team and you have a good brief, and what tiering means and how all of it comes together to do these, amazing things as a creative production team. I have two versions of it now. I have one for tech teams and actually one for, I'm really big in the creator economy. I have one for creator economy teams. I had the privilege to go on site at the Mr. Beast headquarters a couple years ago, and just like learning from that crew and seeing what they need, what they're doing well, I was like, man, I got to put this thing together for teams like this as well, because creator economy is booming. I think it's so much more room to grow, and with maturation comes a lot of growth, and the best way to mature is to have some of these things in place. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. I like the separation of that. So that would be a playbook for when you're working with creator teams, like Mr. Beast, obviously being the biggest one in the world, I guess, to some regard. But tell us about that experience. Like, what were some things you learned? I mean, he's famous for running these incredible systems, right, to produce things fast and run all these very elaborate projects. But what were some things you learned from being on set with Mr. Beast?
I learned that, and it's kind of like, again, there's no shade. I learned that belief that you're able to do something is just as important, if not more important, than the actual ability to do that thing. What I love about the Mr. Beast team, and I think that anyone would go there and learn this, is that even if they don't know how to do something, they believe they can do it. And so they're just going to get it done. And I think that is a huge gap with a lot of people, is that people feel so limited and they feel like, I don't know how to do that. Well, guess what? There are resources and there are people and there are YouTube videos now that teach you how to do a lot of random stuff. And that's what I think is so strong, is that like, it's just believing that you can do something is like I said, just as important, if not more important, than the actual skill to do that thing. And you see that a lot at that team. They hire, what I love about them is they hire a lot of like green, junior talent to help with certain things, and they develop them, and there's so much room for growth there. It was a really, I mean, I was only there for a couple of days, but it was an amazing experience. I still connected with a lot of the people there. And it's, again, as someone who's really interested in the creator economy, it opened up my mind about, okay, seeing the biggest to ever do it, what are they doing, and what can I do? What can I build? That's actually kind of what led me to Bashcast, and what can I build on the side to help people like that expand?
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, I'm fascinating to see how it feels like when you talk about limitations, I really agree with that, right? Setting as some sort of limitation just makes you a little bit more focused, perhaps, rather than having all the endless opportunities. It might be, at least in my personal experience, it becomes overwhelming then in the different directions you can go, right? Setting some limitation. Seems to me like Mr. Beast and what they're doing is like coming up with these crazy ideas, and that is their limitation. It's that or nothing. We're going to blow up 10 Lamborghinis, and how can we make it happen? And
Yep.
then it sounds like also if he's surrounding himself with a lot of kind of beginner's mindset kind of people who just foolishly focusing on one crazy goal, maybe that is their limitation that makes it work. I don't know. What do you think?
That's spot on, I think. When I was there, it was like there was a ton of ideas that were thrown around that were amazing and super creative. They're like, nah, so anybody could do that. Was there, and the whole idea was if anyone could do it, they weren't going to do it. And it's definitely like a different, when I was talking about limitation before, because if we think about the general team, teams that most people work on, there are going to be some restrictions more on the upper end versus the lower end, where Mr. Beast kind of flips it on its head, which is probably why he's incredibly successful in, doing the things that he does. But yeah, the limitation was like, hey, if someone else could do this, we're not going to do it because we want to make sure that we are the doing the craziest stuff, the most outlandish ideas. And it's like, it's so fun. You talk to people there and you're like, wow, I thought I was creative. Like this is, I'm a loser compared to all this stuff. Like their team's amazing.
I also like that their output can also be like, we spent $2 million doing this elaborate shoot of blowing up these cars, and we're going to make a little short out of it that's less than a minute long. I'm like, what? If this was a Hollywood production, it would have been a 3-part series. So they really move fast there as well. I think that's a sign of the times in many ways. Nate, I want to talk about AI and creativity. I mean, You've been in this field for a long time. What has been the rise of generative AI, creative AI that you have experienced or started working with? What is your stance on AI in the work that you're doing now?
AI is a touchy subject. It's something that people are either really extreme one way or another about typically. Where for me, I look at everything as a new opportunity. And so when I look at AI, I don't currently, and here's the deal is, will it replace jobs? Absolutely. Will it take jobs? More than likely. Like if we're just going to be real, but there's also the real factor of it's not slowing down. So we can either choose to be discouraged by it, or we can choose to be inspired by it. And I think that's where my mindset has been is, okay, how do I leverage AI as tools like what you're building to really up level the output, or to get to my dreams faster, or to, try to have this thing come to life, or to help explain, the thing that's in my brain to the average person that I'm trying to pitch to. And that's where I see AI personally being a huge tool for creatives and creators. There's, like I said, there's scary stuff everywhere. We can look at any situation like, oh, that's terrifying. Sure. Or we can say, all right, that's a little scary, but what can we do to help the process that we have now and the things that we're building now and expand those?
Yeah, that's interesting. And you're right. It's always a discussion. I feel from our vantage point, it's kind of died down a little bit. The more people get accustomed to AI, they understand the limitations. Again, limitations, what it can do now. We can only guess what it kind of can do for us in the future. But one thing that we're quite bullish on is the idea that, what we're building for are two things, really. There's creativity, and then there's kind of the crafting aspect. And there's quite two different things. Creativity, I believe, is just the better ideas you have, the more worth you're going to be and more valuable you're going to be as a person. Because I think when the crafting part becomes easier, it's easier now to do AI generated videos, right? And there's some AI artists out there that are phenomenal at it. They're very trained, and they're photographers, and they're trained film producers, right? And real creatives in their own right. So there is no magic button with AI. Currently, you can't push a button and get a Pulitzer Prize winning article, right? Or a New York Times bestselling novel. That doesn't happen. You still have to put tons and tons of effort into it. So the creativity is really, it's really just enhancing how you can craft things. And our stance is like, and my personal philosophy here is that I think harnessing AI for good is really to help more great ideas come to life, rather than having a lot of them not come to fruition, and be able to just help people voice their ideas in different ways. But the creativity cannot really be replaced, right? Because art comes from somewhere. You can emulate artists and great stuff like that, and that might have its a valuable that might have some value, right? You can create stories that you don't have that connection with the artist, but there's also the other side of it. You can really do that, and AI is just a powerful tool for it. So it's an interesting kind of future we're heading into. And right now, there's a lot of obviously AI holds a lot of promise in being able to rapidly prototype things and start testing ideas out before we bring it into production as well. Wells Fargo, are you utilizing any AI tools when you help with script writing or any other productivity tools, whatever it may be?
The way that I see it a lot is that, because for me, I like I said, I learned how to design. I learned how to edit videos, and I'm not great at any of those things, but I'm okay at a lot of them. And so what AI has helped me do is, okay, how do I take all these different ideas and thoughts and then level up them to a degree that is not just passable but excellent. And I think there are so many creatives out there, like creative writers who don't know how to design, that now because of AI, they can make beautiful designs with their writing, and vice versa. Designers who are fantastic, who just maybe don't know how to put the words to it. And so they can then use AI to help, to your point, craft that a little bit better. And for me in my creative process, it's very much to your point, like how do I prototype this out? How do I get an initial response and see how this kind of lands lightly before I put all of my time and energy in this silver bullet mentality of, oh, if I just, you don't need to have that anymore, because now you can prototype something out. You can make a pitch deck in 30 minutes and just kind of suss out these ideas and hone in a lot more on, all right, what's worth my time and what's worth my energy, which I think is amazing. Something that AI will never be able to do is it won't be able to have emotion. And so, and even if they make some synthetic emotion, whatever, like, it's not real. And so I think that's what I really hold on as far as the hope within AI is that, sure, all these tools, they'll be able to design and this and that, but humans are the only ones who are going to have the emotion behind it. And so if you can somehow learn how to tie your emotion to the tools, well, that's when it becomes really, really powerful. And then practically, like with my business, I build GPTs all the time now. I taught myself how to do that. That was awesome. And I have, if I'm trying to raise, I can plug in different VC firms and it gives me their minimum checks, all these different tools that I'm using, or I plug in all my pitch deck or all of my business documents into it. And I say, hey, if I'm writing an email to this person to pitch, it's amazing. It saves me a ton of time. Whereas someone who's super entrepreneurial, that's a game changer in itself. Is I only have so many hours in a day, especially, this, you got kids, like I can't work 24/7. So it allows me to be really effective with the time I do have, and be able to grow and scale at a level that is a little more sane than if I were to stay up until 3 a.m. every night, like I used to.
Yeah, totally. When you have that writer's block at midnight, like, I have to get this out. Can I get something to get started with?
Exactly. No, that was the grind. It was like, all right, how late can I stay up? And what food can I eat that's going to inspire me? Now it's like, all right, I can at least kind of get the ball rolling here a little bit with AI. So,
do you stay kind of in touch with the AI evolutions in your field at all? Like, are you following that closely? Are there specific needs that you're looking for in your day-to-day work? Like, I wish we had this. Like, do you stay in touch with the AI developments that way, or is that when you go and build your own GPTs about it?
No. I like to stay in touch with it. In general, I like to be really tied to culture. Like, I think the world is so filled with it, and people are so interesting. And someone who's a marketer, like, the only way I can understand my audience is to understand that culture and how they're interacting with things. And part of that culture now is AI. It's in everything. And so I try to keep up with as much as I can. Right now, I feel like, personally, there's a lot of fool's gold out there, a lot of tools that say they do something that really they're just like leveraging the ChatGPT API to like build, which is fine. Like, there's no shade for people building that kind of stuff. I am interested. There's two main things with AI I'm interested to see. Is one, AI that actually does what it says it's going to do. Like the SEO tool that improves all your SEO on your website. Does it really do that? Or do you just say you do that because it gets you a 10% increase? And is that good enough? Where it'd be great to have something that it's tried and true. I'd love to see, again, as a producer, I'd love to see something that's maybe more hands-on project management, because I think that a lot of that work can be streamlined. Now, I will say for all my project managers and producers out there, if you're listening, AI will never be able to handle relationships. And the biggest thing that I did as a producer was manage relationships, is manage the heat between the CMO and the head of design, and make sure they didn't kill each other. So I won't be able to do that, but some project management stuff would be great. So get really good at relationship building, producers and PMs. But yeah, just trying to. So that's the I'm interested to see AI tools that actually do what they say they're going to do. Then also I'm interested to see. I've had this perspective where I see AI a little bit right now, like similar to blockchain. I know a decent amount about the blockchain. I worked at a blockchain agency, they did a lot of blockchain stuff. Web3 scared a lot of people really fast because, in my opinion, again, from a marketer, they didn't soften it. It was very much like, welcome to Web3. You're now in the metaverse. And you're just like, oh, what? If you're not into that at all, you're like scared. You're like, okay, I don't want to be in the metaverse, Mark Zuckerberg. Like, please take away this avatar. Where I feel like AI has kind of taken some of the same path, where we're like forcing AI down people's throats, when, if we're really honest, AI has been used for a lot longer than these last 3 years. Like, it just wasn't called out the same way. And I think we do a little bit better if we stop scaring people with the AI tag. Like, just say that it's machine learning, or don't say anything. just let it be.
Yeah.
But anyway, those are my two interesting takes about AI right now. Are we going to scare people away from it because we just don't know how to do things slowly anymore? It's like, nope, we're all AI now and everyone's useless. You're like, okay, wait, hold on, I don't want this.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through the full. We're still in it to some extent, right? Although I would argue that AI is starting to land with people a lot more. We don't have to talk about it as much. It appears in the software that we use. All of a sudden, there's a tab that's powered by something, right? And Apple is also doing their Apple Intelligence. It's not AI front and center. It's just going to introduce the use cases to people in a natural way where they are, rather than forcing it down their throat. I agree with that, and I think we saw an early kind of we're kind of a setback on that. A lot of these AI tools are just kind of feature tools that people build quite fast, and they didn't maybe have the longevity, and maybe didn't do what they promised to do. And that hype cycle gets kind of people a little worn out about the concept. I mean, AI is such a broad term, right? Every time I talk to someone on this show, and whenever I speak to people in the field, it's like AI is. I mean, it's digital media, right? So talking about computers. Do you use computers?
Exactly.
It's going to be one of those things, and we've seen those things before, right? We lived through the '90s and the early 2000s, like everything, like all these new technological kind of evolutions carry that with them in the beginning. It's just a sign of the curve we're on, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, I fully agree. And I know the blockchain example was maybe a little extreme. I think the benefit of AI... No, but
it's an interesting one, because that was such a technical, it's a very, very technical, very engineering focused kind of solution to something where the mainstream and most people couldn't grasp what the use case was. What's in it for me never came out as simply maybe as AI has done, but AI is also more scary than blockchain.
No, dude, you're spot on. Like, blockchain, because of the way it was marketed or not marketed, to your point, it was like, okay, but now what? Where with AI, it's very clear the benefits of AI and how it helps me or helps you as a consumer. And so, to your point, I think people are going to be much more receptive of those types of things, where I don't think anyone, not anyone, but it wasn't as focused on originally in the blockchain technology side of like how this actually helps people long term. And it wasn't until it felt like blockchain was starting to kind of phase out, or at least of the hype cycle, where you started to hear, the California DMV wants to use blockchain to help, and you're like, oh, this is an actual use case that I can put my brain around. But, trading monkey pictures, that wasn't something I really could see. You know what I mean? Like, and it was a lot deeper than that. And like I said, I'm very much into the blockchain. I'm very much a believer in it, but it's just interesting to see it be presented versus AI now, which to your point is scarier, but more helpful. So you're like, all right, like, can I deal with this?
And I think we're being fed more and more like useful use cases, right? Where it's not scary. And I think just in the we've been in market since February with Wondercraft, and the story started out like, what is this? This is AI. But once you break it down, what we do is it's really just AI powered in a workflow and a platform where you design and you collaborate, and we put the creativity and the copywriting in center. And then AI just enables that thing, and it's a lighter introduction to what it actually does to you, and that has resonated so well in how we go to market and how we explain what we do. And it's not just a gimmick of sorts; it's really something of value. And I think a lot of companies do that really well, whether they're incumbents in the industry and introducing AI as part of their platform. Some have done it poorly, some have done it really well. There's some good examples of all that, right? In the whole race of the AI models out there. But it's interesting. I mean, in terms of what you're, in your role, how do you see this evolving? What's your take on the next evolution of AI for the next, say, 5 years, and how you will be using it in the future? Is it all about the process? What's your take looking into the future? You don't seem like a fearful person about it, right? Like you're leaning into, how is this good for me? So
no, it's a great question. I think that part of the reason why I'm not fearful of it is because I am kind of like that weird jack of all trades, but I'm not master of none. And so AI helps me, like AI helps me seem a little more legit. But I think for me, when I look at AI and I think about, kind of to your point, like the next 5 years, I think that what I think AI is going to do is it's going to help primarily with what you're saying, process stuff, kind of cutting out some of the work that maybe was a little more monotonous, which as a creative, like, I was a producer, but I don't love taking meeting notes and summarizing them. Like if you love that, please find me. Because anyone out in the ethos listening, because I don't know if anyone really loves that, but they know that it's the thing that they do well and it's how they can contribute, and so they do it. But now, with Otter or all these different meeting AI tools, they can now synthesize your note. Like I see more of that, like a smarter version of that happening. Obviously, integration with email, again, helping a lot with the creative process and how we actually, things like what you're building, allowing people to take those creative thoughts and those visions in their head and bring them to life. Like that's going to be so beautiful. And I think that's, if we're looking at the bright side of AI, I think that's where the next 5 years really comes into play, is that we're going to have a whole new batch of creatives and people who are creators that never would have been creators before, because AI enables them to actually bring the thing that they love or the vision in their brain to life, where maybe 10 years ago they would have never been able to do that, which I think is amazing. I think in turn, this is also why I love the creator economy, and I think that it's positioned really strongly, is I think it will also require brands to be a lot more intentional and people to be a lot more intentional when it comes to their content and how they work with creators. I kind of have two thoughts on this. One is because in my opinion, what a lot of brands are going to do is they're going to start using AI to make ads. And right now we're seeing content marketing perform at a 6x multiple of traditional advertising right now. I think that gap's going to just get larger, because we all scroll on Instagram and every 3 posts there's another ad, and you're just like, I don't care anymore. Especially when it's all AI, you're going to be, I don't care about this AI ad anymore. You're going to be looking for a voice or someone to help you navigate the recommendations. And I think it's a huge opportunity for creators. I actually think it's an even bigger opportunity for micro creators. I feel like we're going to have this resurgence where people like a Mr. Beast, they're going to be the anchor creators where we go there for entertainment. But I actually just heard an interview with Tyler, the Creator, where he talked about how the internet has homogenized everything. And there's some parts of it that are good, but there's some parts of it that are really bad. Like his example was, why people who are in LA talk like people in San Francisco, talk like people in New York. He goes, you used to know from the second someone started to talk where they were from. And now the internet's kind of homogenizing everything. I actually feel like we're going to start to see micro influencers start to really shine, because AI will be doing so much of the advertising and pushing people into this homogenized model where people are going to want niche and bespoke content or recommendations for their area. Or, hey, if I'm in Buffalo, I want to go to the hottest Buffalo creator to know, okay, where am I going to get wings today? And it's going to be barbell, but it's fine. It's like, how do you as a micro creator and micro influencer start to help other people? And I think that's going to be a huge opportunity as well within AI. Is, okay, AI will do a lot of the heavy lifting for like the big advertising and all that kind of process. And now the creators will start to be kind of what the networks used to be, which is local advertisements, local recommendations, and working with businesses if they know how to do it.
I think that's really interesting. What would you say to brands who are listening to this, and like what should they do? What are some steps brands can do to get ahead of this? Because I agree with you. I think we're already seeing it. I think the infrastructure around micro influencers might be a little wonky still, but I agree with you. We're so trained to skip by our the ads when we recognize them, and we see that on TikTok now. Like all of the ads on TikTok are basically emulating influencers, right? There's someone talking to the screen, and we're trying to get out of that. So it's evolving already in that way. But what's the future for brands here? What are some things you can actually do to organize around this future?
As a brand, one, learn how to work with creators. I think if you're leading a brand or you're part of a large company or whatever, and you're listening, learn how to work with creators well. And what I mean by that is, take it or leave it, but creators, the reason why people listen to them is because, and why they relate with them is because they have their own voice, they have their own niche. And from somebody who has worked at brands and is still working at brands who try to control that narrative, what ends up happening is that these things feel super inauthentic, and then they underperform. And then brands decide that creators aren't for them because they're like, oh no, this creator activation didn't work. It's no. It would have worked, but you put them too much in a box to be like your brand versus to be like them. And that became problematic and it didn't perform well. So if you're a brand or you're part of a company, learn how to work well with creators. And it doesn't mean for you to be inauthentic. Like, I'm not saying everybody should start posting memes and campaign. Now, I think memes in marketing are a huge deal. But if that's not your brand, find creators and people who are more aligned with your brand and work with them then, versus trying to find the biggest creator and say, hey, Mr. Beast, can you pitch this Preparation H? Like, okay, that's a weird, you know what I mean? Like, that's a weird collaboration. You need to understand what creators you're working with, and how you integrate with them well. Appreciate creators. I think that's another thing that brands, they see it as a line item on the budget versus a partner to work with. Creators are not line items. It's not an out of home campaign. It's not, oh, I'm going to put my ad on all these buses and there's no emotion there. They are people. Learn how to work with them as people.
No, but it's great. I mean, you talked about before as well. Something I heard before. Actually, you had Christoph Becker, who is the chief creative officer at Whaler, which is this huge, I'm sure you know Whaler, huge kind of creator economy agency, so very creative centric. And they talk about the same thing, right? Brands, they want to really work with brands who are brave enough to let their brand go a little bit and give it to the creators to really work with, but on a very much a collaborative, in a collaborative way, right? So what you said in the beginning of our chat was like you'd love to collaborate, and I feel like that's might be a prerequisite also for brands who wants to work in the creator economy, that you need to be able to be brave enough to let go of your brand and have someone riff on it, but still be able to have a relationship and have that kind of collaborative feedback to make it really work.
No, that's exactly. So you were like, you finished my thought. Thank you. My thought was to be willing. Be willing to try new things. I think that we are we're in a time right now where people are looking for standout campaigns or just like different stuff. And again, it doesn't mean be inauthentic. Like, don't start, big banks shouldn't start posting weird, inappropriate content. That's not what I'm saying. But being willing to say, you know what? I know that we have this stuff that used to work for us, or we have these flagship campaigns, but let's just set aside a little bit of budget to try something new. And to try to branch out a little bit. To your point, be brave, and also, last thing, realize that follower accounts don't mean conversions. I think I actually was just working with an influencer team. I won't name names, but they were within a company, and they're like, "Oh, we're looking for people with the highest amount of followers in this niche." And I was like, "Well, there's ways that you can see their engagement and their interactions and their conversions." And like, "Oh, this person had half the amount of followers, but 3 times the amount engagement rate." I'm like, okay, those are the people you want to work with. Like, that's why I'm saying learn how to work with creators well, because people, they just look at a number and they're like, all right, this is the big number. I want to go with the big number because that's going to fit my budget. And just take a week and go through a course and learn what it means to be a creator and how to work with them. And I guarantee the brands that do that and they know how to do this kind of stuff, to your point, they're brave, they step out, those are going to be the ones that stand the test of time. I actually think legacy brands are at a really big risk over the next 10 to 15 years. But that's an offshoot opinion. But I think that there is opportunity to shake stuff up right now as smaller brands, like especially in large financial markets, things like, you see Robinhood doing it, they're taking over, and they weren't even the first to market necessarily. They knew how to hit their audience. So anyway, I digress.
No, all this is super, super fascinating. And I think it's just speaks about the time that we're in. Like, being a brand now, you have to be you're not only a brand producing services and products, you have to be kind of a media company and tell your stories in all these different channels. And I'd say that it's probably more complicated and interesting than it ever has been before. We can go back, only a couple of decades, and it was all about advertising. Right now, it's advertising plays one part, because you that can convert, right? You can get the reach and the scale, demographic that is interested in what you're doing. But more so, you got to build around that and get your brand to be materialized in places and with voices that your audience is really seeking out and are actually paying attention to. Because it's all about the attention at the end of the day. We're not getting a lot more of it. So difficult. Very exciting. We're running out of time here, Nate. I can stay on forever. It's so nice to talk to you about all this. I want to do some quick ones to just finish up here.
Okay.
Where do we find you? How do people get in touch with you to follow your progress? You have a lot to say on this area. Are you active somewhere?
LinkedIn is probably the best one for this audience. I'm at Hey Nate Fox on all social medias. So, Instagram or whatever. I'm a collaborate. I love to connect with people. Like, if you just shoot me a note with your connection requests or whatever, like, I'll chop stuff up with you all day. I don't know. That's again, I think we grow better together. So
also give us some recommendations. Anything that you're currently reading, listening to that's super inspiring to you that you want the world to know about.
Actually, I have. I just picked up this book from the Harvard Business Review. It's emotional intelligence. It's called Focus, and I really recommend. I'm only like 2 chapters in. I love these Harvard Business Review books because it's kind of like a culmination of a bunch of different essays and articles that their students are writing. And so it gives you a variety of perspectives. So I really recommend that. And that's kind of, talk about other podcasts. I don't know, but like I've been listening to, I've listened to Diary of a CEO a lot. That one's amazing. It got, I think, one of the most downloaded last year. So I'm not the only one on that train, but, those are the types of things that I like to listen to try to get inspired by I think other people inspire each other too, like talking to you is incredibly inspiring and learning from you is incredibly inspiring. Just looking, obviously preparing for this and looking you up and learning more about you and your family. I'm like, dude, this is amazing. And your ability and your team reaching out and connecting with people like this, that's the best. That's how things grow. And so the more we can do that, I think the better off we all are. And you are leading that incredibly well. So I really thank you for that.
I appreciate that, man. I really appreciate that. Okay, so we're going to put some links in the show notes. So Focus from Harvard Business Review. Diary of a CEO, we're very good friends with Steven. He's actually a backer of Wondercraft.
I know about Wondercraft as it stands now. as you look at AI and the future of it, what's your big dream for this? What is this is something that you're clearly really passionate about and you're kicking ass at it. Like, what do you want this to be? And I'd love to learn more about that.
I mean, it all comes from what we talked about before. I mean, I've been in this space for a long time. I've always been working with, media and technology in some extent, and together with brands. I was also agency side before I joined Spotify. This is 20 years ago. But it was, and I think that throughout the course of my career, I see that storytelling is growing with importance. Like, it's so important to be a storyteller. It's like what I drill my kids are on I value more the way that they can tell stories and how they nurture their human creativity rather than their math quiz. For that reason, I think that's such a future skill, to be coming up with ideas and solve problems and tell stories, to be able to articulate what you're doing to others. It's such a skill, and it's such a throwback to the origin of being a human. But I digress. What's the plan for Wondercraft? I mean, we really want to build a storytelling platform, and if you now use Wondercraft, it kind of comes in two dimensions: a storyline editor, which is basically a really powerful text editor where you can type your script or your ad copy or whatever you're doing, right? And we have so many vast use cases, from voiceovers for videos to social media, and to little podcasts, to internal training, to meditations. It's a lot of use cases, but it all starts with that storytelling, what you actually are typing, and then be able to fix that together. So the crafting part is really just us, like, hey, do you want this in an Australian accent, or do you want it in a French accent? And you can start really for the first time sketching with audio to make new ideas kind of come alive. And it's just a joy to work with. It's something that I've wanted throughout my entire career, even back when I started Spotify in 2009. We worked with so many cool brands because they all wanted to be, aligned with music. Like, everyone's favorite music, of course we want to be in there. So we have the coolest brands in the world. Like, what do we do? I'm like, well, we can do, how about we do some audio narrations in between tracks? So you can just talk about Coca-Cola and Reebok and whatever you're doing. And they're like, how do we produce audio? This is not a thing. What do we sound like? So that kind of kicked off this journey of, like, what do brands sound like? And I think audio has such a future ahead of it. I mean, that was 15 years ago, 16 years ago. And now it's 2024, and I think podcasting is growing like crazy. Audiobooks is growing like crazy. We're having new form factors, right? Soon we're not going to be tethered to a screen as much. And I think audio has such a brilliant future. And I always love the audio storytelling. So we're moving into that. Might move into video as well, because it's just a way of distributing stories, right? And how that's evolving. But to answer your question shortly, it is a production tool where you put your creativity in there, and we give you the tools to really make those come alive without having a huge studio and sound engineers and all of that. And working with, over 100,000 creators now in 50 countries, which is also bonkers. Like, we have people in so many places.
That's amazing.
And that really inspires us to keep going. And so,
dude, that's amazing.
Build a community around it. Yeah.
Just to give you, your props and flowers, is what I love about this, is that in the wake of AI, many people are worried about losing the human touch. That's like what, you hear a lot of people concerned about. And you're finding ways to leverage AI to actually build on the human touch and build on the storytelling, because that's what people are intrigued by is your story. It's how can I connect with someone through my experience, through my past, or whatever it is. And so the fact that you are one of them who is using AI for the good of humanity and people trying to share is, like, it's incredibly encouraging and incredibly inspiring. So I love that. I love your focus on creators. Like I said, what I do is more of, like, helping creators monetize their content through games and things like that. But, it's all in the same space. Is how do we help people grow, expand, connect? So I love it. It's awesome.
Well, that's great. I'm happy to hear. I'm glad you like it. I feel like we're onto something really, really good. And we've grown like crazy since February. So we're excited for next year to come and see how we take this further. But yeah, Nate, it's been so nice to meet you and sit down with you. I feel like we need to bring it back for part 2 at some point, see where we are in the world. But before we leave, I'm sure a lot of people look up to you as a big inspiration. If you're setting out to be, you coming out of college now and want to follow your footsteps, what do you recommend people do to get started in the creative industry?
this is it's gonna be silly because I think a lot of people give you like we'll start here and go to this job or whatever. I'm gonna give you just more of what I would say is a leadership principle. And do I have a? Hold on, let me see if I have a notebook. Yeah. In the front of every notebook I have, and I've done this probably for the last 10 years now, is I write the initials JAV. It's probably backwards, but yeah, you get it. And what JAV stands for is just add value. And it's like I don't mean to be hokey with it. I don't mean to be, but literally that is the lens I started looking through. Again, like I said, 10 years ago when I came to San Francisco, I was like, I just got to find a place where I can add value. If I can just add value, I will be able to go to the next step. I'd be able to find the next thing. And I think a lot of times people who are early in their career, me being one of them trying to navigate it, is, okay, well, how can I make them see that I'm special? When in all reality, especially when you're early in your career, if you can just go and add value, eventually people will see that you're special and they'll see that you have whatever skill you have or the technique that you have or whatever makes you different. And so if I were just stepping out of college again or kind of navigating my world here, I would do the same thing as just add value. Where can I go and just add value somewhere to help them grow, expand, reach a new audience, do whatever it is. And then from there, I think that's just, you're bound to grow.
Great final kind of parting words of wisdom from Nate Fox. It's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much, Nate.
No, thank you.
The rest of your day out in California and the rest of your week before the holidays.
Awesome. Sounds good. Yeah, if you're in San Francisco, hit me up. But yeah, it was great to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you for watching and listening to Makes You Wonder. If you enjoyed this episode, do us a solid and hit that subscribe button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Amazon, or wherever you get your podcasts. For extra karma, please share with your mom and your friends too. Makes You Wonder is made with love by Wondercraft, the AI audio studio for brands and creative teams. It's hosted by Oskar Sarander. You can find Oskar on LinkedIn, X, and Threads. Links in show notes. This episode was produced by Alex Hughes Morgan. It was edited by Zaina. A nice young man named Dimitri from Wondercraft was the executive producer. Learn more about Wondercraft at wondercraft.ai.